Welcome to the Hats and Bats podcast with Kevin and Matt.
Today is Sunday, May 5th, 2024. Happy Cinco de Mayo, Kev.
Happy Cinco de Mayo. Has that drop bat sound always been there?
That's always been there. That's my nice little touch at the end.
It's very nice. It's the first time noticing. Maybe it's the new format here on StreamYard, but I just picked that up. It sounds terrific.
Dude, we are looking fancy. We're looking legit. We're looking bougie. Look at this. We got the little scroller at the bottom, the little slide action.
Yes. I mean, now all our Google Slides skills are now really, truly going to pay off.
All those years of grad school, all those thousands of dollars to learn, become a teacher is coming to play right now.
I love it. I absolutely love it. How often do you use Google Slides in your classroom, Matt?
So I use it. I just put like an outline of the day up on there, but that's the only time I use it because I don't really ever do like notes or anything like that. So I'm always just like, here's the outline for the day. That's it. But I never, I'm assuming with you being history, you use it every single day.
All the time. So I took this little template from Slides Go, which I can happily say that I pay for because it has like some really, really cool designs, especially history related. I am very teacher-centered when it comes to my instruction because I love telling the story, and Slides Go has some great templates, and this is one of my faves, even for my America Through Sports class. I love this template. I've been using this for my Jackie Robinson, Joe Louis, Jesse Owens presentation for that class there. I absolutely love this template.
I actually, when I was like working on it the other day, when I was sitting at Starbucks, I was like, oh, wow, like this is legit. I've got to step my game up a little bit. I was sending like pictures to the back of the presentation. I'm like, I can't get outshone here.
Well, that's what we do in the social studies department. It's what we rely on here. So, I'm glad to introduce it to you, and let's get started. A lot of good baseball stuff to talk about today.
Let's go. So we'll start typically like we always do with Beat It Out. I got a little bit of trivia. I did have a trivia question that I had to scrap, and I went in a different direction. Then we'll go on to rounding second. We will dig for third, and lastly, we'll come home with our baseball teams for outside. I will just
say, if we were getting observed right now, I mean, just kudos to us putting the objectives up on the screen so everyone can see, so students are engaged and understanding what we're going to be talking about today. Let's go. Let's do this.
So if we were getting observed, I would make sure I'm walking around the classroom much more than I typically do. A little bit more engaging, a little bit more rah-rah. So maybe I'll have some of that energy. All right, so for segment one, for Beat It Out, for trivia, my initial trivia question was going to be about the Rockies and the fact that they did not, in every single game, they were like, they were trailing. But then the game, I think it was Friday, they got out to a 3-0 lead. They end up winning.
Yeah, against the Pirates.
I'm going to scrap that. So one with a different direction after like the Rays, and we'll talk about the Rays City Connect this week. I was just thinking, like I always do, like, what's something that's topical? And with the Rays City Connect this week, they obviously completely new uniforms. We'll talk about them. But so what I thought was there are 3 teams currently that have a bridge on their City Connect cap. Can you tell me the 3 teams that have a bridge on their actual cap that they wear on the field?
So I'm pretty sure, I mean, obviously Tampa Bay is one.
Tampa Bay is one. They have the Sunshine Skyway Bridge.
Yep. And I believe it's the Mets and the Queen City Bridge. What's the bridge that we talked about last time?
Queensboro. Like I said, I'll never get that one wrong again. Yeah.
Queensboro Bridge, and I believe I want to say San Francisco. The Giants. Is it the Giants with the Bay City? Yeah, there it is.
Very good. Yep. So those are the 3 with the Golden Gate Bridge. I actually like the way they executed this one. I feel like the Giant City Connect is like really bad. But I do like the little subtle. I mean, this is right up your alley with the side patch, but I like the way that they do it. I feel like it's
I love anything orange. I mean, I have loved the Giants colors for so long. I mean, those Giants colors are also our high school, my high school alma mater's colors. I love the orange and black. You can't go wrong with the orange and black. Unless it's something athletic during my heyday, anyways. But from a color scheme, I've always loved the orange and black. And the Giants do it very, very well. The City Connect to the Giants is okay. It's not the greatest. But compared to what we've been talking about this entire time, it's like right in the middle of the pack. But this week, Matt, the Rays, and I know we're going to get into this in our next segment here. Let's get the banner going. Yeah, let's go ahead. We'll go ahead and we'll round second here. The Tampa Bay Rays, they have killed it with their City Connect. Go ahead, get talking about it. I can't wait to hear you go through all this.
Okay, so I'll go through all like the hubbub about it. I will say when they initially released, and I want to get your opinion on this first. I love them. When I first saw them, I instantly went to Fanatics. I'm like, I need the hat. Love them. After watching them for 3 games this weekend, and the games were awful with the Mets, I do not love them as much as I did before. So there's a little subtleties that I would change with them. They weren't as fantastic as when I first saw them, but I'll be interested to see your initial reaction to them. What did you think?
I thought so. My anticipation with what you're going to say about why you first you loved them and then you didn't like them as much seeing them on TV, because I saw people on Twitter making similar comments like, "Oh my God, they're on TV. It doesn't look as good." Well, again, we have to keep in mind that the Rays play in one of the crappiest, home stadiums in the sport, if not the crappiest, lousiest place to play a professional baseball game in the Trop. And it's kind of like what I was saying with the Mets and why I did not like the Mets. The City Connect has to connect a little bit with the stadium. And the color schemes that you're seeing with the Rays right now, it's very vibrant. It's very electric, if you will. And that's the complete opposite experience that you see from the Trop, especially watching a game on television. It's why I did not like the Mets, seeing that charcoal color combined with the orange and blues, those vibrant colors we always see when we're looking at Citi Field. And it's almost like the inverse effect that we're having with the Rays. The uniforms pop off, but the stadium doesn't go well with it. And I think that's a big reason why people are now not feeling these Rays City Connect as much as they were. Like, seeing them, look how beautiful this picture is. And I know based on your the PowerPoint here, the Google Slides, that you have a whole bunch of these pictures you're going to go through, and each picture is going to leap off of the page. But the problem with seeing it on the field is the field itself. It's awful. It's disgusting. That's the Trop. That's the problem with the Rays. That's what, again, this is a microcosm of what holds back this organization. This organization has great scouting. It has had great players. It has made a great run over the last 5-6 seasons. It has been a constant of winning in the American League, but what holds it back is this stadium, is this dump that they play in. Now, I know the new stadium is supposedly coming in the next few years or so, but until the Rays get a new stadium, we are always going to look at this organization as a missed opportunity. They have all this great talent. They have this great vision with the uniforms. It doesn't all connect because you have all these outside factors holding it back. And I think that's the only thing holding back these uniforms. It's the same thing that's held back this franchise for years. You got to get this you got to get a new stadium. You have to find a new home. I'm going to say it, and I'm sorry, Tampa fans, even if that means outside of Tampa Bay, find a good home for this organization, these great minds who have made the most of a lousy situation in Florida for so long. We've hated on the A's and the Pirates for so long because of their ownership, and yet the Rays, who we can say the same things for, they have tried their best to make the best out of this lousy situation. And until, whether it's an ownership change or a stadium change or a combination of the two, this is what we're always going to come back to, I think, unfortunately. So, yeah, that's where I kind of rest on this. The uniforms are fire. You see this anywhere else? If the Mets did something similar to this, we'd be going out of our minds. We would be spending so much money on this stuff that our wives would be greatly concerned. But because it's Tampa, because it's a lousy situation, unfortunately, I think that these City Connect uniforms are not getting the gravitas that it's deserved.
When you bring up the Trop again, when I saw the pictures, like the high-res pictures, the pictures of them in their team shop, I was like, these are by far the best City Connect. By like nothing even comes close to them. You know how much I love the Nationals. You know how much I love the Red Sox. To me, those were ingrained with their city. I was like, this is perfect. I had no idea Tampa was such like an underground skating sort of like area. I didn't know that, but I was like, the colors reminded me of like the vintage Devil Rays when they first got released. But as you can kind of see in the picture here, even seeing the number 18, incredibly difficult to pick that up on TV, where I even went to a different TV in my house because I'm like, maybe it's this TV just isn't bright enough. I could not pick up the numbers. The nameplate on the back looks awesome in that fluorescent green, but when they're using that gradient on the numbers, you can't even see it. And even Gary Cohen brought up today, he's like, yeah, you can't see the numbers at all. It's because like the Trop's lighting is like so like basement-y, where you're like, I can't even really like see this at all. So initially I loved it. Some of the logos that they use, by far best logos I think that are in the sport. Love them. I just wish that they took the outline that they had, that like yellowish glow, put that around the numbers instead of using the gradient. I felt like it would have been infinitely better. So just some things about the uniforms in general. They just call it the grit and glow. So that's like the whole theme behind it. And it's the first time that actually like on the front of the jerseys that it says Tampa Bay across. I didn't know that they hadn't had Tampa Bay on the jersey since 2007. So it's the first time that they actually had Tampa. I didn't know that. It was just something that I learned when I was like doing my research on all this. And then the whole idea, the whole thing pays homage to this iconic skate media through everything, but it's done in such a subtle way, such a perfect way. I was like you said, this is what a City Connect should be. It's hip, it's fire. It not only like reaches like the younger kids, but like this brought me back to playing like Tony Hawk when I was in actual high school 20 years ago. And like these are perfect. A couple little nitpicking things. I love the Tampa Bay in the gradient on the chest. I feel like it's easier to read that on the chest than you could in numbers on the back. But when I looked at it a little bit more, like the little fire coming off Tampa and Bay just reminded me of the Hot Wheels logo. I was like, oh, I don't know if I would really go in that. I like the aesthetics, but then the only thing I could really fixate on was just this whole idea of Hot Wheels. But then by far my favorite logo, I think, in the sport, if not the entirety of sport. So again, with this whole homage to the skateboarding underground community, they have a skating ray. Like, this is ingenious. The Mets are like, hey, let's put a little like Subway token on our sleeve. They're like, let's lean into this. Let's take our old mascot, the Devil Ray. Let's put him on a skateboard. My only issue is I wish that was more prominent. It's like a little patch on their leg sleeve. It's like a leg logo. I wish it was bigger. I'm like, you put that on an arm sleeve. I'm like, that to me would be awesome. So I'm like, that logo in itself, phenomenal. I would buy merchandise just with the skating ray on it, like by itself. How unique, encompassing of their whole like motto and theme. Loved it. And then you get into the actual logo that is on their hat. And I'm saying like this hat, when I first got it, this is probably my absolute favorite hat that I own right now. Even though it's a little big, I've been wearing it like every day right now. The logo itself, just the
oh my God, you have it already?
I bought it already. I was going to make my dramatic switch over to it right now.
Wow. How did you get that so quick?
Hey, shout out to Fanatics for one time doing something.
Wow. Shout out to Fanatics. That's definitely a first on this pod.
First time. So what you can see with the actual Devil Ray itself, so they incorporated their bridge, the Sunshine Skyway Bridge, which I believe the next slide will actually be.
It's gorgeous. It's awesome.
Dude, how ingenious is that? Like, they take the peaks of the actual bridge and they encompass it right into the Devil Ray. You see the water ripples coming off of it. Like, this is the creativity that I feel like 90% of the other City Connects don't have. Like, when you're going again, I always go back to the Nationals and the Red Sox just because, to me, they represent what their cities are. You take this logo, this iconic bridge, and you encompass that right into your logo. Like, that to me is something that is more like a genius would make on TikTok than an actual like Nike or MLB person. So I was just like floored with this when I first saw this. So I'm like, this to me is just absolutely phenomenal. And there's more pictures of it. The underneath the cap, I don't know if you'll be able to actually like see it on here.
Oh, yeah, no, I can see it really well. Yeah.
So it's supposed to represent like skateboard tape that's underneath.
And like underneath the skateboard, absolutely.
And then you've got the band that's got the gradient color to it as well. And even like the little subtle touches, the New Era logo has the gradient that's
the multicolored, absolutely.
And then you've got the MLB logo on the back with it, with the button still on the top. So like, to me, this is going back to like the old school purple and black logo that they used early on. And I just absolutely, I'm like, this is fantastic. So there's another picture they have. And then on the sleeves, they actually have this thing where they call it like the neon sway, where you have a pelican, which is just one of the most common birds in Tampa. And then you've got these 3 palm trees in the back, which is basically like there's a skate park in Tampa called the Perry Harvey Senior Park Skateboard Bowl. And on that actual sign that they have at the park, there's the 3 palm trees. So they incorporated that behind the bird. So like all of these, I'm just like, this is just completely ingenious. It pops out. It's different. It's what makes Tampa Bay different in like their whole entirety, from the way that they teach pitching to the way they construct the roster with like the money issues. It's just perfect for a City Connect, perfect for an alternative logo. This is what more teams should be doing. Fix the number scheme so we can see it a little bit better. But I feel like overall, even if you look at like Rosie, like the belt here, just pops. The who started today for the Rays? Do you remember who started?
Pepia.
Yes, and he came out early when he had the stirrups on.
Great. Yeah, he got a line drive, I believe, off those stirrups that knocked him out of the game.
Yeah.
But yeah.
They just looked absolutely fantastic, and I loved it. And I wish more teams leaned into it, went outside the box, but still pay tribute to like their roots in their city.
100%. And again, I was going off on this a little bit earlier today on my other podcast, the Dad's Podcast. Check that out on Spotify as well. How organizations have really kind of put themselves up into the next tier, who have figured out organizations like the Nationals, the Orioles, the Atlanta Braves, not even from a talent on the field perspective, but by investing in the complex, not only in the stadium itself, but the surrounding areas as well, and making the ballpark experience more of an experience, not even just what's happening on the field, but what's happening outside the stadium as well. The guy I podcast with, Jeremy, who lives near Washington, D.C., has gone to a few national games and was talking about this one game where he wasn't even in the stadium for long. I think it got rained out. And he spent a majority of his time in the bars and the restaurants outside of National Stadium. And, like, that's what people have been talking more and more about, like how what makes Atlanta the best stadium in Major League Baseball right now. Kudos to all apologies to Pittsburgh and what they're doing at PNC Park, but it's the surrounding area and all the other things they're bringing into it. They're turning their ballparks into little mini cities, destinations to go and hang out. And the antithesis, good English word if I might add, of all of that right now is Tampa Bay, is the Trop. Here you see all these brilliant minds who worked for this organization, who went in and created these jerseys. We talked last week about the Mets being a little almost too artsy. And here is all this beautiful artwork that is put into these uniforms and what makes it work. The subtleties, but the combination of the new stuff, the nuance, and the old school tribute, as well makes all of this work. Again, there's so much great stuff that works for this organization, but still so much that holds it back as well. And it begins, I think it might even end with that stadium. If you had a better stadium, a better stage for these uniforms, we would be sitting here right now saying they're the best City Connect uniforms by far, and it's not even close.
My only thing is based on the location of it. I think if the plans go through and they get a new stadium, I still think they're gonna have a hard time drawing just based on the location. Like even with these weekends games. Now I know you got a lot of transplanted New Yorkers down there. The majority of all 3 games seem like there were Mets fans there. I just don't know if Tampa Bay is ever going to actually draw the home fans.
So much of that, Matt, it's not only because of how lousy the stadium actually is, but the location of the stadium as well.
Yeah.
I mean, the traffic you have to go through, the area in which it's located in, it's what keeps people away. But when you look at things like the Tampa Bay Lightning and how well they draw, how well they've been doing over the last 7-8 years during this wonderful ride they've been on. You look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as well. I mean, listen, Miami, you have a lot of stuff going on. You have to be extremely good to get the people of Miami to come out and watch your professional teams because there's lots of distractions around there. Tampa Bay, I do feel, is more like a Pittsburgh, more like a Cleveland in the terms of there's not that same kind of level of entertainment, but if you produce a good sports product, those fans are going to come to the stadium. Another thing to consider as well, Matt, you look at the way this franchise has been forced to run itself. You can't invest in people long term. The poor Rays, the one guy they decided to invest in, Wander Franco.
He's a pedophile.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is an organization before that refused to invest in absolutely anybody. So if you are a fan, it's hard to invest in a franchise that is so unwilling to invest in their players. And the one time they do it, you're right, it's a situation of Wander Franco. It's a horrible situation. I do think a well-built, well-constructed stadium in a good area of Tampa Bay is going to bring out the fans because this team wins. And this team wins a lot. And as long as that front office is still in place, as long as that scouting department is still in place, it shouldn't change really anytime soon. So I do have like a little glass half full mentality when it comes to the Rays. They just have to get out of that ballpark and into a better situation.
Yeah, it's funny what you're talking about with Franco. Like when you think of the Rays, when I was watching them this weekend, there's like 3 Rays that I actually knew were on the team, and it was like, I'm like, who are these people? They're wearing spectacles like I wear, and I'm like, and these guys hit, they pitch.
Yep.
They don't even have a back end. They're like their bullpen is awful.
Yep.
Shutting the Mets down. I'm like, I don't know what they do. They just talk about constantly, you've got to get to 2 strikes. That's like their whole pitching motto is get to 2 strikes. When you get to 2 strikes, something good happens. And I'm like, can you imagine if you took that infrastructure, injected Cohen money into it, New York City location into it, 100%. They would be knocking down the doors for the Dodgers, like that upper echelon of an organization. I saw this on Twitter too. When you're talking about Franco, I was just thinking about like, okay, who could have the Rays built around throughout their history? Evan Longoria is probably one of the most famous players that they've had. I saw on Twitter when they were talking about this particular logo, the skating Ray, what'd be a good name for it? They said Evan Longoria. I'm like, that to me is like that's just like ingenious, like little things like that. Sure. I love. One more thing about this weekend, and then we can get to segment 3. Did you watch Saturday night's game with Adam Wainwright on Fox?
Yes, I did.
So I was just talking with my in-laws about it. Mm-hmm. I despise, I loathe. There is not a strong enough word to describe my hatred for Adam Wainwright. What he did to me in that playoff game to Belgium,
okay.
I will never get over. Okay, it's permanently ingrained. One of my deepest, darkest moments in my life. Him as
was he saying something that brought back all these negative memories for you?
No, and this is the issue that I had. He was freaking awesome. As a color guy, I don't think I've learned more listening to a baseball game than listening to him. I don't even know who the play-by-play guy was. I think his name was like Amin or something like that. The enthusiasm that they had for a national broadcast game was unparalleled. It was phenomenal. And then the little subtleties that Wainwright was getting across that I don't pay attention to when I'm watching the game. He's like, oh, look at the way that this guy swung. He's susceptible to a slider low and in. And then that was the pitch that was thrown. I'm like, he's clearly a magician when he was on the mound, especially in his later years when he's not breaking 90 with his fastball. He had to outthink you through an at-bat. And being able to tap into his mind, and he was so articulate and well-spoken and energetic. Like, put him on the big-time broadcast instead of like John Smoltz. I absolutely loved him. And I'm like, I almost felt like I was rooting on Satan by doing that. Hopped onto Twitter real quick, and all of Mets Twitter, same exact response. I hate the guy. Worst baseball player of all time. Love the guy as the announcer. I want more of Adam Wainwright. I'm like, the dude like killed it. It. He made Gary, Keith, and Ron to me seem like average, and that's almost sacrilegious.
He's very good. He's been on MLB Tonight as well. The rapport he has with those guys already is really, really awesome. When he was doing he was on MLB Tonight the night that was it Severino had the perfect game going into the 8th inning, and Greg Amsinger, who is phenomenal, though. I absolutely love his voice. I actually got to meet him once at Cooperstown. Fantastic guy. He is as enthusiastic on TV as he is in person. Awesome guy. And he was going on about, okay, after Severino gave up the hit, take him out. And watching him and Adam Wainwright kind of go back and forth was just amazing. Because Wainwright, of course, obviously, unfortunately, as you know, it was the gamer type pitcher. He was the bulldog. You have to pry the baseball out of my hand to get me to come out of the game. And he was encouraging all those same things with Luis Severino, like forget the analytics, forget the situation, forget the injury past. This guy's dealing, give him the ball. And you saw this nuance between the new school and the old school, and it played out so well on television, watching the two of them talk about it, because I was on a thing where I had turned on MLB Tonight, and Severino was just cooking. So I didn't want to turn on the SNY broadcast because I thought I was going to jinx it. And once the hit got given up, I'm like, I'm still not going back to SNY. As much as I love Gary, Keith, and Ron, they're the best in the biz. The conversation they were having was so incredibly good. So, yeah, I'm feeling all the same stuff that you're feeling about Adam Wainwright. I think he's awesome to listen to.
Oh, I think he's an absolute rising star. And I would just listen to him talk about baseball for hours on end. Love him. All right, so let's go for third. Let's dig for third.
All right, so digging for third. So if the playoffs started today, now the currently what you're looking at right now is I did this as of April 30th, the very last day of the month. This is something Matt and I are going to do each and every month. At the end of each month, we're going to break down what the postseason would look like and go through a few conversation topics about what the playoffs look like as if it ended right now, things we'd be looking forward to, things we think are going to happen, things we think are not going to happen. So let's get it right. So this is the current playoff format right now. We have the Orioles and Guardians having the first round bye in the AL. The Guardians having the number 1 seed, waiting to take on either the Yankees or the Detroit Tigers, while the Orioles await the winner of the Royals and Mariners. In the National League, the Braves had the best record in the National League as of April 30th. They would await the winners of the Phillies and Brewers, whereas the Cubs would await the winner of the Dodgers and the Reds. So the first thing we are going to get into is based on what we're seeing right here, because it is only April, Matt. I mean, this is probably not going to look like this as of October. So Next one, what is not going to happen based on how the playoffs look right now? So I believe I do go first. Do I go first in this one?
Yep.
Awesome. So I'm going to tell you what does not happen based on what we're seeing right now is we are not, I repeat, we are not going to see 3 teams from the AL Central make the playoffs. As much as I love my Royals, as much as I believe in what Cleveland has going on right now, because I believe more offense is on its way with Kyle Manzardo only days away from being called up in Cleveland. And as much as I love what the Tigers have done, what the Tigers kind of represent in the sport, the fact that they brought up all their young guys, and they're like, you know what? These are the best guys in our organization. We don't care about timelines or contracts be damned. We're just bringing all of our best guys up. And Riley Green has been cooking these last few weeks. He's been an absolute monster. He's hitting over 300. Has, I believe 8 home runs on the season already. Tariq Skubal is already one of the best pitchers in baseball. Will be vying for the Cy Young this year in the American League. As much as I love all these things, and the Minnesota Twins, today, we're on a 12-game winning streak. Kudos to that magical sausage they have hanging out in their dugout right now.
How gross is that?
It's disgusting.
How much do you think they use that as like a phallic symbol? That has to be used as a phallic symbol for something that we don't know about. There's some inside joke there that we're
100%. I actually believe Rocco Baldelli said that in his interview, he cannot mention the other things they have talked about when it comes to the sausage. But Matt, to me, the only thing uglier than that sausage in the dugout right now is the teams they played. You look at how this winning streak has happened, and yes, you have to beat the teams that are in front of you, absolutely. But we can still assess, and we can still say, okay, is this sustainable or not? And a majority of this winning streak has come against the Angels and the White Sox, which we could argue are the 2 saddest teams in the American League right now. Kudos to the Twins to winning those games. Offense is starting to click right now. But when you look at the Twins, Byron Buxton just got hurt yet again. Carlos Correa, already on the injured list. Shocking. Royce Lewis, this has been the story of his career, already on the injured list. I like what Pablo Lopez does. I like the other guys they have in that rotation as well. Duran, at the end of the games, is as good as you can get.
Did you see his intro now that they have?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah. It's so cool. But when I look at the entirety of the American League, I think this is the safest bet to make. I think these AL Central teams are all going to beat up on itself. Prior to this little Rays mini streak that they're on right now, and thanks for the Mets to just absolutely destroying my argument. I really think the American League is a two-team race between the Orioles and the Yankees. I'll get to them in a second. I think maybe one, maybe 2 teams can come from the AL Central. And from the West, the Mariners are starting to figure it out a little bit. The Rangers, I think, will figure it out with all the help they have coming back from the injury list as well. And I just can't. I'm still in that mindset. I know we talked about it last time as well. But if you had me to put money on a third AL team making the playoffs or the Houston Astros, I'm still going to throw money down on the Astros. I think it is. It's still too early. Again, it's April. The way Altuve's been playing, pitching help is going to come eventually. I'm still going to put money on Yordan Alvarez and Kyle Tucker and Alex Bregman and those guys figuring it out enough not to all of a sudden be world beaters like they have been, but when I compare that roster, that organization, that front office to either the Twins, the Royals, or the Tigers, my beloved Royals, I'm still leaning towards the Astros.
They're 10 games below 500.
It's only April. It's only May.
Yeah,
we've only been through. I'm not saying they're winning the West. Can they catch Royals, the Tigers, or the Twins, I'm not counting them out of that just yet. I'm not. And even the hat you're wearing right now, Matt, the Rays just ripped off 3 straight wins. I believe they won the series prior to that as well. I'm not ready to count them out either. I also think the Blue Jays have better rosters, better starting rotations, more stuff to bank on than 3 teams from the AL Central going ahead and representing the American League in these playoffs. I'm not there. I'm not there yet. I have that. As much as I love the Royals and I love what Cleveland has done, it's going to take a lot based on what I've seen so far to convince me that Minnesota and or Detroit is going to be able to hold off Tampa Bay, Toronto, and Houston in order to get in the playoffs. I'm not ready to say that yet.
I'm with you with the whole Tampa Bay, Toronto. I can't get on board with the Astros at all because to me, I think the Astros are going to be probably a bottom 10 team in the entire league by the end of this, and I don't think they're actually going to improve. I think they're actually going to get worse. Nothing about them from just, again, eye test, it does not smell like the typical Astros, where if you were to take the name off the front of the chest and you were just to watch them play in the way that they are playing, again, in that division, if you're talking like the AL Central is going to basically cannibalize themselves, the Astros have a pretty tough division as well, going against that Mariners rotation, even though they don't hit, going against the Rangers when you get a DeGrom back, when you get a Scherzer back. It's going to be tough, and you're relying on a 78-year-old Justin Verlander to carry the load, and we know what happens with that being Mets fans.
78.
That might be...
I know. I feel your emotion there. I'm with you.
Yeah, but I would love to make a bet. You and me make a bet where the Astros make the playoffs. I'll give you like 10-1 odds.
But see, again, I would not take those odds. Again, I will take the odds of either the Astros, Blue Jays, and Rays making the postseason over the Tigers or the Twins, or even the Royals for that matter. I don't know how you would work that out, those odds out, but still, I still think Toronto, when they're close, is going to make a move to get them closer. I like the Rays based on their pedigree to have guys in their farm system to bring up to get them closer. The Astros, if they're close enough, that they'll go out there, make a move to make them closer.
Yeah, but their farm team is so bad. Their minors, there's nobody.
They are, but the Astros still go out there, end up making those moves. I'm not convinced yet until I'm proven otherwise that the Tigers are going to go and make that move. The Twins have been strapped all season long. They were talking about how strapped for cash they are. They're hemorrhaging money. I don't think there's any move for them to go and make to put them in the next the next tier, to make them a more relevant, a more playoff team. So when I look at the Twins and the Tigers and even the Royals, that's the finished product right there. I don't see anyone else really coming up in those systems to really help them up, to help them out, to give them the boost. And I don't see their front offices as of yet parting with talent in the minors to go and get that guy to vault them into the next level. And I think, again, that's a big part for these young teams, these unproven teams, to go out and get that extra piece, especially when they haven't been there before. A Toronto has done it before. A Houston has done it before. Tampa Bay just always seems to have guys in their system to do it. I'm not sure those 3 teams are. I will say one of those other teams, besides from Cleveland, will be able to make the playoffs. But for 3, that's too much.
My counter argument, just foreshadowing things a little bit, because I do think they're going to get 3 in. You think back to the playoffs last year. You think about the 3 teams from the NL East that got in. You have a team like the Miami Marlins that sneak in, that are able to punch their ticket, getting the 85, however wins that they got last year. I think there is enough there to get them in. Like, again, I think the AL East is going to be difficult because again, I'm foreshadowing a little bit. I think Toronto's going to turn things around. I'm not as sold on the Yankees. I think the AL West is going to get one team in. I don't see why the AL Central can't. My concern is, are they going to? I think the Guardians are going to be the cream of the crop. I think the Twins went through a nice little spurt, coming back to earth a little bit. The 12 games in a row put them right back into everything. I feel like the starting rotation will be there. What I really worry about, though, are they going to be like the Cincinnati Reds from last year, where once the calendar turns from like July to August, like you said, when we don't have the reinforcements,
are you still going to be able to? You think that about Cleveland?
I think Cleveland will be the one that's there that will win the division in the end.
Yes.
I'm just worried about, like you said, with the Detroit, with the Kansas City.
100%.
Like, are they going to be able to withstand for the entire year when your depth gets questioned, when people start going down? Like, when you bring up the young kids, like you said, they're not going to be able to go out and trade. Are you going to be able to bring up the young kids? Are you going to be able to throw them into a pennant race in August? Are they going to be able to perform? So, like, that's what I worry about with them. But again, weird things happen in baseball. And like, it happens all the time in football. You're like, okay, this division is like the division. They get one team in. It's because they eat each other up. So I'm just thinking, like, why not? Why not the AL Central, where we always thought that was the worst division? They're going to have all these games against the White Sox, who might be bottom 3 worst teams in the league. Why can't they get fat off of them? I just think that there's enough there for them to punch their ticket. For mine, I'm actually going to go with the fact that I do not think the Atlanta Braves are going to win the NL East. I don't think the Braves are going to win 90 games. I think the Phillies right now are the hottest team in baseball. They're tied, I think, with the Orioles for having the best record in baseball. The lineup is stacked. We've talked about this before. Even with Trey Turner being out for 6 to 8 weeks with his hamstring injury, that lineup is so incredibly deep. Their pitching rotation are studs. Every single night is a stud. Tawan Walker, who's like, what, they're 4 or 5?
Yeah.
A 10-year Major League veteran, sinker, slider, is going to get you 6 innings. I feel like the Phillies are primed to take over the division. They have the depth, and their lineup 1 through 7, with Trey Turner being out now, is just legit. When I was looking at the Braves stats, if you take out Marcell Ozuna, who's having like an MVP year.
Yeah, so, he's crazy. He's crazy good right now.
But right now, when's he going to have another domestic dispute? When's he going to get caught driving drunk again?
I hope he doesn't have another domestic dispute.
The guy's got a bad track record. Like, I'm not putting all my eggs in that basket. And if you look at Matt Olson's stats, Acuna's stats, Austin Riley's stats, they're nowhere near where they were last year. As a team, they are nowhere near the home run total, the historical home run total that they were on last year. They are not clicking right now. And you lose Strider for the year. You're relying on Chris Sale, who's still
that's my worry.
Like, he's still sitting like mid-3s ERA. Like, you're relying on, like, that to me is a recipe for disaster. Red Sox fans will say you cannot count on Chris Sale ever. This is what you're going into the big part of the season. Now, like you said, we're only beginning part of May. You have your ace gone. Your main middle of the order is not producing. And again, you're relying on Ozuna to continue this MVP pace, 300 average, over 9 home runs. I don't think he's going to be able to sustain that. I don't think the Braves are going to be able to sustain that. I think Acuna is going to go back to being Acuna. He's still going to have his stolen bases. They just don't seem to be the same Braves that they were last year. When the Mets played them and the Mets went down into Atlanta and won that series, last year the Mets had no shot of winning a series in Atlanta, and the Mets were a better team last year, I felt, especially at the beginning of the year. The Braves, to me, just seem like they are off a tick. Like, they're an 88-win team. The Phillies, to me, can be a 98-win team. Like, they are just loaded absolutely everywhere. The mojo, they are just cruising. And again, it all comes down to pitching, and they have one of the best starting rotations, back end of the rotation, back end of the bullpen in the National League. So my prediction is the Braves will not win the NL East, not because they're having a bad year, because the Phillies are going to go up and grab it. I think it's going to be the Phillies division for a long time to come.
Yeah, I think the Phillies are just kind of laying in the weeds right now. I mean, you look at the Phillies lineup, and you can make the same kind of arguments that you're making right now. That Bryce Harper hasn't really started hitting yet. Kyle Schwarber is kind of Kyle Schwarber, but again, he's super streaky. And to start the year, wasn't a streaky in a good way. Castellanos, Trey Turner, who's just started to heat up, but the power's still not quite there yet for Trey Turner. I'm with you. I'm with you in what you're saying. I think there's a lot about the Braves to be weary of, especially in terms of a starting rotation that can win in the postseason. And yeah, I do. I have serious questions. If Chris Sale is going to be there or Charlie Morton's going to be there, then you're relying on the likes of Bryce Elder, AJ Smith-Schuster, and so on and so forth to make up a postseason rotation. I do. I think that's asking a lot.
Completely agree.
All right.
Next one. What do we think is going to happen? I believe I actually go first, and mine will be relatively. Oh no, you actually. Well, actually, let me go
first. Yeah, go ahead. You go first. Go ahead.
So, like we outlined before, you say they don't. I think they do. I think the Guardians, I think the Twins, and I think the Tigers will get in. We don't need to harbor that fact again. That was just kind of my thinking. Some division always seems to get 3 teams in. I'm picking the AL Central. All right, so that was short and quick. So yours.
Again, not to just keep plugging my other podcast here, but I do plug ours a lot on my other podcast as well, Matt. But my other podcast I do with my cousin Joe. This is the week. All podcasts long, I've been doing this with him. I've been trying to get him back into baseball. And the last time we did this, we talked about how the importance of rivalries in baseball. He loves his Yankees, but you need someone to hate to really kind of get the emotions going and to really get you invested. And for Yankee fans, it's not the Red Sox. The Red Sox aren't that team anymore. It's the Orioles, because everything Yankee fans clamor to, the old glory days with the Jeters and the Bernies and the Posadas of the world, that's the Orioles right here and now. We're witnessing it. And now they have their ace in Corbin Burnes. Grayson Rodriguez, while he's going on the IL stint for a little bit, he has looked like an ace as well.
Corbin Burnes might be the best pitcher in baseball right now.
He very well might be. And with the two of them together, this is an organization. I think they are hands down the best team in the AL East. That's what I think is going to happen. I think the Orioles win the AL East. And although it is early, all those, and I've had this conception of the Orioles and Yankees since the beginning. I think the Orioles are a different kind of great, and the Yankees are just a step behind. Yes, Juan Soto is amazing. Yes, you can talk about how Aaron Judge hasn't clicked yet. You can talk about how Garrett Cole's not there yet. You can talk about Jason Dominguez comes back. You can talk about all these things. The Orioles are as close to complete as complete can be. It's the deepest lineup in baseball outside of, which I will talk about later with the San Diego Padres. But you look at 1 through 9, you do not get a single break in the order. And that's even with their best prospect, Jackson Holliday, being sent down. Gunnar Henderson right now is an AL MVP candidate. Adley Rutschman is the best catcher in baseball. Guys like Ryan O'Hearn and Jordan Westberg, Colton Cowser. This lineup is stacked. It reminds me of an old school American League lineup. But to me, what gives them the edge is what I saw this past week when they played against the Yankees in that 4-game stretch. 4 games, the Orioles won 3. But in that 4-game stretch against the Yankees averaged 7.5 strikeouts per game. Because that is still what will hold the Yankees back. And yes, Juan Soto, he doesn't strike out a lot. 100% agree. Stanton strikes out a lot. Judge strikes out a lot. A lot of those guys, Verdugo, it succumbs to the strikeout. And yes, you can point to any other lineup in baseball, think, oh, well, they strike out a lot too. That's fine. I'm not comparing any of those other teams to the Orioles either. I think it's a significant advantage the Orioles have. And on top of that, with this new ownership, like I was talking about with those AL Central teams, this Orioles team is not done adding yet. They have so much talent in the minors, and they have a deficiency right now in their bullpen, in that closer role. They have to clean up. That's even despite that, they're still the best team in the American League in my eyes. But once they fix that, they go out there and possibly get a Mason Miller, possibly get a Camilo Devon from the Giants if the Giants are out of it. That's going to make this team nearly impossible to beat. And I say nearly because, again, anything can happen in the postseason. But I look at the Yankees team, I look at the Orioles team, and I see a clear division between those two teams. The Orioles are better, and Yankee fans, as excited as you are, and I'm kind of happy for you, even though I don't like you at all, because I'm a disgruntled Mets fan. Get used to looking up at the Orioles all season long.
I'm just looked up the odds because when you I'm like, that's not that outlandish to say that the Orioles will win the AL East. But I'm looking across the board, everything from FanDuel, MGM, Bet, ESPN, DraftKings, all of them have Yankees as substantial favorites. So DraftKings has them as plus 115, the Orioles at plus 200.
Wow.
ESPN or FanDuel has the Yankees at minus 115. The Orioles at plus 145. That's actually really shocking to me. I would think that the Orioles would be the prohibited favorites because of the injury concerns. When you're talking about the Yankees, you're not talking about Cal Ripken here. Like, I looked up Stanton's games played over the past few years, 101 games last year, 110 games 2022, 139 games in 2021. That's kind of an aberration. 2019, he had 18 games. He's not going to be playing a full slate. Look what happened to Judge last year. Stubs his toe in Dodger Stadium, and then he's done for the year. So, I mean...
Didn't he crash into the wall?
He stubbed his toe. He had, like...
oh, my God.
He had, like, gangrene or whatever. And he's
wow. God, I thought my hatred for the Yankees was bad.
You got to stop defending them. I think you got some pinstripes on underneath that shirt. I just think, like you said, like the Orioles lineup, and they're only going to get better.
Yep.
Like, they are so deep where if they lose the reinforcements, and they have the farm system where it's like, hey, we need back at the bullpen help, we can go out and get it. Are they going to be willing to give up some of the young kids? But their farm system is so deep. So you give up your 10th rated prospect, you're not going to even feel it. So, I mean, they are poised to make moves to fill deficiencies. Like, I'm 100% behind this. I was against you saying that 3 teams in the AL Central wouldn't. I am with you saying the Orioles will win the East.
Sounds good. Let's go on to the next one. Most interesting wild card matchup. Now, I'm pretty sure you do go. You go first there. Go ahead.
Yeah, I do. So mine's going to be short and quick. I think it doesn't matter who the teams are, what the matchups are. It doesn't matter how sexy a matchup could be. It doesn't matter how teams actually match up, like from X's and O's standpoint. The entire baseball world and the entire sports world, other than the football conglomerate, are going to be focused on the LA Dodgers in that very first round. The Dodgers are going to win 100 games again this year. They just wiped the floor of the Braves this past weekend. Shohei looks like he's going to win MVP again. They look like absolute juggernauts. When they get to the postseason and you play in that crapshoot at that opening series where you can only lose 3 games and then you're bounced, are they going to be able to make it past that first round? Like Glasnow, who knows if he's going to be healthy because his track record says no. You cannot rely on that starting rotation to me where they're going to be able to like shut the door. So I think regardless of what happens, whoever the Dodgers plays, I don't even care if it's like if the Mets sneak in or if you get it. I don't even know if like the Padres. I think the Padres Dodgers would be a good matchup. But if you're taking like the lowest level NL team, put them against the Dodgers. If they lose that first game, it's going to be like hell is absolutely like the world is on fire right now. So whatever the amount of, again, the regular season means nothing with them. they need to make it to the World Series in order for it to be a successful year. I think they need to make it to the World Series for Dave Roberts to still have a job next year. They absolutely need to make it not only to the NL Championship Series, they need to make it to the World Series. God forbid if they get bounced in that first round again. Again, say they play even a team like the Braves in the first round. They absolutely need to move on. If not, I can see them being like, what are we doing here? We've got to start over. And I don't know if they really could with the contracts that they have.
No, they couldn't with the amount of money they have committed to these guys. They have these contracts. They're not going to be able to move at all. Again, Matt, I agree. This is all the stuff I feel like I've been saying as well about the decisions they made, this franchise in general. Like, they put this target on their backs where whomever they play, maybe with the exception of the Atlanta Braves, because the Braves have won a World Series recently, that when you play the Dodgers in the postseason, that could be your World Series. Being able to beat them in a series just puts you in the next echelon of great teams in the National League. They are the mountain that everyone wants to climb, but it's become a mountain that everyone seems to be getting up to and conquering. You talk about the Yankees being an injury away. Shohei Ohtani is not exactly a symbol of health throughout his career either. Like, something happens to Ohtani. Look at what that lineup is going to forget the pitching staff, which I've been on since the beginning, but that lineup all of a sudden is going to look incredibly different. And you talk about the Astros having nothing left in their farm system to trade. They just brought up Andy Podges. This is it. That's all they have left. There's no one down there to go and make trades or to go and make moves for. Bobby Miller already hurt. They're waiting for him to get back. Walker Buehler is coming back, but let's see what he looks like when he does get back.
He's going to be on inning limitations. And
again, if it looks anything like the way guys like Dustin May has looked when he's come back, or Tony Gonsolin, this is a major, major issue. The Dodgers are racking up wins because the top three guys in that lineup are just absolutely unfair right now. When you look at Mookie, Shohei, and Freddie Freeman, they're off to an historic pace. But we can realistically say if they don't continue this historic pace, this is an incredibly beatable team. And don't get, all blown away by the numbers they put up here in April and May so far. Again, because this season is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And yes, if they were hot this right now in October, I would say this is the best team in baseball. But it's only April. And it's peaks and valleys, and I haven't seen them hit a valley yet. And once they do, how are they going to be able to rebound?
And baseball is different than any other sport that you play. If football, you can tense up, you can run through somebody. You can't grip a bat any tighter and expect better results. So you lose to the Padres in 2020, 2022. You lost to the Diamondbacks last year. You start gripping the bat a little bit harder. Doesn't mean you're going to hit the ball farther. You go down the first inning, who knows what's going to end up happening to them. So I just think when they get there, they're going to have that in the back of their mind of, this is basically like,
are you not? Right.
It's the curse of Daniel Murphy. I feel like ever since the Mets swept them, what was that, 2016, 2015?
Yeah, 2015. No, it wasn't a sweep. It was a 5-game series. The Brown won game 5. It was amazing.
So you have, ever since that, you've got the Mickey Mouse World Series that they won during COVID. Every other time, they were a playoff disappointment.
Yep.
So, again, you've got that weighing on you. Again, it's not the New York media. It's not the New York fans. It's not the Philly fans on you. So, Dodgers are a little bit more lackadaisical. But, again, you're going to start pressing. And how do you respond when you press? What happens when Mookie isn't playing MVP level? What happens if Freddie isn't playing at MVP level? Like, are they going to be able to withstand that? Is Dave Roberts really a good bullpen matchup manager? Like, I honestly, I don't know.
It's like watching those 90 Braves teams all over again. They're great regular season, but you'd watch that team over the course of the regular season and go, it doesn't feel like a playoff team to me. It doesn't feel like a team that's going to be able to go on that run. And the Braves always had the target on their back. And they had a rotation that, to me, you could argue was a great postseason rotation. Yeah. You know, like some Maddox and Glavine and Smoltz. And for those of you who want to poo-poo on that, I suggest you go back and look at Maddox and Glavine postseason stats while with the Braves and Smoltz. They're not as bad as people think. But when things came together, it just didn't happen for them. I get all those same vibes with the Dodgers.
Just don't rely on Glavine to win you game 162
God almighty. We got to move on, Matt. He was 37 years old, whatever he was at that time.
He should have been executed is what should have happened.
Oh, my God. Next one. Hey, thank you. Let's go to the Brewer. All right. I'll be quick. This one really intrigues me because as much as I have tried to bury the Brewers, they keep coming back. And I'm a big believer in what Bill Simmons has always said about Ewing theory. This time it's not with a player, but although you could argue it's Corbin Burns, but I think it's with the manager and Craig Counsell. This Brewers team just knows how to win. I think it's ingrained in them because no one else in the National League Central has taken it away from them yet. And I know last time I was talking about how great of a race the NL Central will be this year. I still think it can be it. But the Brewers, I'm still waiting to fall apart. They don't fall apart. They lose their ace in Corbin Burns. They lose their manager. They lose probably the best closer in baseball in Devin Williams.
After losing their best closer the year before.
And after losing Josh Hader the year before, and it still does not matter. This team just keeps on winning. And teams like this are dangerous in the postseason. I know the Brewers have not had great success in the postseason with this group, but I like the offense a little bit better with Jackson Chourio. Bryce Terang is a threat on the bases. There's a lot of things that just work with this team. And as much as I love the Phillies, if I'm the Phillies right now, I am clawing for the division title. So I do not have to play a team like this in the wild card. I want nothing to do with the Brewers in the postseason, no matter who's playing them. No one's going to want anything to do with the Brewers.
They remind me of the Rays of the NL. They are the Rays of the NL.
Yep. Well, to me, I think they're the Cleveland of the AL. We're expecting them to just bottom out. They don't want to spend exorbitant amounts of money. I mean, they don't really make splashy moves. They make a couple of moves here and there to try and convince their fan base that they're trying to stay competitive. But they're not one of these big market teams. They're not trying to be, but they are really smart. They're very well run, and that equals winning, and that's what the Brewers have been doing.
Hopefully Stearns brings that to the Mets. Like, you think about the Brewers, too. Like, when they play the Cubs, it's a Cubs home game. They don't even get home games when they play the Cubs, and they just still, like, they are the best team that I think I've seen this year so far that the Mets played. Like, the Tigers whooped the Mets, but the Mets ended up squeaking out and getting that last game against the Tigers. The Brewers just absolutely demolished the Mets the opening series of the year. And I'm like, who are this mismatch like group of players that I haven't even heard of before? Yep. Rhys Hoskins can go fly a kite in a thunderstorm. I can't stand him, but they just seem to plug players in and then just they win.
If Rhys Hoskins is watching, we would still have you on the podcast.
I would not.
It's just anger from Matt. He doesn't really mean any of these things. We would love to have you on. We think you're an awesome player.
He's the modern day Chase Utley. I would throw a 78 mile per hour fastball right at his ugly dome.
Now, Chase Utley, we may not want to have you on the podcast, but Rhys, I think you're still welcome here. Next one.
Ruben Tejada forever. All right, so which team do we think is currently out of a playoff position that could make a run and end up playing in October? You go first.
Yeah, it may be that I'm blinded by my early season predictions, but this is a franchise. This is a mindset I will continue to support because the San Diego Padres, which could easily Just back out and be a mid-market team and say, you know what, we tried, it didn't work. We spent all this money. We're going to shed payroll, try to recoup, start this thing back over. The Padres said none of that. Padres said, let's bring up our young phenom prospect in Jackson Merrill, and let's just keep it rolling. Then they went out and made this trade for Luis Urias, who I thought was going to be waiting. The Marlins were going to wait to the deadline to make all these moves, but the Marlins have already admitted they're out. They're done. More moves are coming from Miami, but to me, this was their best piece because I don't think they're trading away Alcantara or any of the big name pitchers. But Arise was the big guy here. To me, the big asset that teams would want. And the fact that he's going to this Padres team, I think he is the missing piece on this Padre team. That table setter at the top of the lineup for the likes of Tatis, for the likes of Machado, for the likes of Bogarts, Cronenworth, all these guys. The Padres now have the best lineup in all of baseball, 1 through 9. There's not an easy out in that lineup. And again, they're very inconsistent right now, but all you need is 2 or 3 great weeks. Give me 2 or 3 great weeks of the Padres being, world beaters, 10, 11, 12 game win streak. I'm hopefully not asking for much. And the Padres are right there in that playoff mix. And that's not a team I want to play at all in the postseason. I could see one of those NL Central teams popping out like the Reds, because if A.J. Preller wants to make another move, he's not going to stop. He'll keep going. I think that entire organization is going to inch and claw their way because the Diamondbacks have been very disappointing to start this year, which is a huge bummer. But there's still a door open for that last wild card spot. And as much as I love the Reds and I would love to see the Mets make a run, there's just too much talent in San Diego, and I think too much of a drive from that organization to stay relevant, to close the door on the Padres. I think the Padres do get in.
I was on Twitter last night, like late at night, and I saw that Luis Urias was trending. I'm like, oh, what happened with him? And then when I saw the trade, I was initially like taken back. But as I read more and more, it was like, okay, you're basically getting like a singles merchant. That's all he's going to do is just continuously like hit singles. In today's day and age, that's not sexy. That's not necessarily like wins games in the modern baseball. And then it was the notoriously cheap Marlins are basically paying his entire salary.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that to me is weird. Why are you making this deal on May 4th? Like these sort of deals, like baseball trades do not happen before Memorial Day. Like I couldn't even think about another trade that happened with a bona fide star, a all-star, a batting champion, like being traded this early. And I'm thinking, is this the Marlins just being like, okay, we're throwing up the white flag like right now? Or is there more to this? The more I read about the prospects that they got in return, didn't seem like they were getting like any like CJ Abrams or anything along those lines. So I'm like, why are they possibly doing this? Like, what is the deal here? And I just could not make any sense of it. Like, I don't know why they said that apparently there wasn't a lot of interest in him with him being at the end of the contract and then becoming like a free agent. They weren't going to be able to get as much. So they just thought get whatever they can get now. But again, they're paying the money, which I'm like, you're not the Mets here. Where you're like, here, take Verlander. We'll pay half. You're the Marlins here. So, I mean, I'm like, all of this just reeks to me. It just absolutely did not make sense. And I'm like, if this is a guy that's a final piece or somebody that's going to help push you, like, wouldn't more teams be interested in it and be willing to offer more or not have you pay as much money to get rid of him? Whenever you're paying money to get rid of somebody, that just is like, whoa, what's going on here? So I just thought the whole thing smelled very weird. Are they trying to replace Soto with an on-base, put the ball in play? Like, I honestly, I don't know. I was kind of like dumbfounded with the trade. It just didn't make sense to me.
Again, not to be corny, but whenever I can make a good dad joke, I'm not going to miss the opportunity. You know what it smells like, Matt? It smells fishy.
Oh, God. Oh. That was bad. Even for me, that was bad.
I know, but it smells like the Marlins. This is who they are. This is the talk about the inverse of the Rays. This is the Marlins organization. Gorgeous stadium, gorgeous city. No reason in the world why you can't be successful other than you continue to mess it up with every management group that does this, that takes over. Now, Peter Bendix, the general manager for the Marlins, just a little over a week ago, went to the microphones and was telling everyone, relax, it's April. Guys, we look at our metrics. We look at our analytics. And this team is not playing to where we think it can be playing. Kind of like that scene from Moneyball when Jonah Hill and Brad Pitt were arguing to the owner, like Steve shot at, hey, we're okay, even though we're 20 games below 500 or whatever they were. But the A's end up going on that magical run. Now, here he is. It's like he had just seen the movie or something, but you might as well went and saw Angels in the outfield and prayed to God that you could rectify the situation. But it's a week later, now you're abandoning all of it. Absolutely all of it. And you're trading away the one guy you could rely on for offensive production. And you can say Jazz Chisholm all you want, or Byron De La Cruz, or Josh Bell. All those guys have a pedigree. But what Luis Ariz was to that team last year, what he's been over his career, when you look at the parallels between him and Tony Gwynn. Now, I'm not saying he's Tony Gwynn, but there's lots of things to look at to go, okay, this is a bat in the lamp. It's going to be an instant impact bat on a good team like the Padres. That's great value. That has terrific value. And you look at the Marlins system, how depleted it is from a offensive standpoint, from a hitter standpoint, and then you go ahead and make this trade with one of your best offensive weapons, it screams just Marlins to me. This is why you guys are who you are. This is why you've always been irrelevant. Forget the stadium. Forget your new uniforms. You want to be the Florida Marlins, the Miami Marlins. As long as that ownership group is there, and this is the way they operate, I have no sympathy for you. None at all. This is just everything we hate about the owners in this sport. And there's lots of great owners in this sport. And there's lots of adequate owners in this sport. But you look at this Marlins group, what the Marlins have done in their time in South Beach for the 20, 30-odd years they've been there, this is just standard operating procedure for the Marlins. This is what they do. This is what they do. And now they can go ahead and be irrelevant for the next, 3, 5, 10 years before hopefully they discover the next, Derek Lee or Hanley Ramirez or
Josh Beckett.
Josh Beckett, exactly. Someone along those lines. Well, I'm sorry, Marlins fans. You're going to have to wait again.
So you traded Pablo Lopez basically for 1 year of Luis Ariz. Like, my question, and I'm going to go a little rated R here, so if there's kids listening, don't listen to the next 10 seconds. Do you think when the Padres called up the Marlins, they're like, hey, will you trade us Luis Ariz? We'll give you head. They're like, yep, deal. I'll take it. Not knowing that they meant Dylan Head. Do you think that could possibly be a – I'm sorry. You hit me with the thing smell fishy. I gotta go out there too.
Again, I can't. But my big thing I always say, especially when I'm talking about history and crazy things happening. I'm not trying to compare the Marlins ownership to dictators, but like, why would people turn to a dictator or a tyrannical regime or anything like that? You cannot rationalize irrational behavior. I can't rationalize this. I don't know. I cannot wrap my head around the baseball minds that go ahead and continue to make decisions like this for this organization, or an organization who continues to go out and to get people to make decisions like this. It's insane to me. It's insane to me how, again, not there's anything baseball can do to really stop these individuals. But my God, can we just bring better owners into situations like this? It's Miami. It's Miami. This should be an easy situation to produce a good professional team. The Dolphins are relevant. The Heat are always relevant. Why can't the Marlins always be relevant? It's just beyond me.
They have the scene. You have the whole Miami nightlife. You have no state income tax. If you wanted to have a formidable team, you could absolutely draw mega superstars there. Yep. But let me pose you this question. Would you rather be a Marlins fan or a Mets fan?
Mets fan, 100%.
Considering the fact that you would have 2 World Series titles, really?
100%.
I would go through 20 years of absolute pure crap if I got to stand at the top of the mountain.
I can't imagine you would be anywhere near as invested as a Marlins fan as you are right now as a Mets fan. I can't imagine at all, because again, we can go into the history of the Mets, and again, like the whole era in the 2000s when that team was an absolute joke and the ownership had to get out of there, and so on and so forth. I still think, hands down, I wouldn't even hesitate, because Matt, why would you ever invest in look at the Marlins World Series teams. Aside from 97, where do you see this coming? I mean, the collection that won the World Series in 2003 was an incredibly talented group. But look what you get. Yes, you get your World Series. It's great. And then 2 years later, they're all gone. And then there's no reason to even watch baseball anymore. Because in the end, I think all baseball fans always want to be invested in their team. Good or bad. They always want to be invested in their team. And this is an organization, it's a franchise, who is very rarely ever invested. And yes, they struck gold twice. A broken clock is right twice in a day. So
better than being right known times. We're going to make a poll. We'll make a poll. I'll put one on TikTok. We'll put one on Instagram.
Yeah. Go ahead.
You are a little skewed because you have tasted the champagne because of your football allegiance. I would be very willing to go through 50 years of complete basement dwelling if I got one season. If you're telling me right now the Mets, the Jets, or Tottenham could win the Premier League, win the Super Bowl, or win the World Series, and they will not have another run to the World Series in 50 years, I would sign up for it.
Matt, so you're telling me, so the other day again when we did our all-time teams, you had Edgardo Alfonso and John Olerud on both of on your team. Neither one won a World Series.
They got to one.
Right. Well, they got to one, but they didn't win it. You think Marlin fans are still they're talking in the same reverence about Edgar Renteria, Jerry Sheffield, Craig Counsell, Derek Lee? You think they are?
Absolutely.
I would love to hear from diehard Marlins fans and hear them talk about their players of the past the way we talk about Mets players of the past, or even my buddy Dan, who's a Pirates fan because he grew up in Pittsburgh. Talking about Pirates players from the past, another organization that hasn't won a World Series since 1979. I would love to hear Marlins fans talk that way, that same amount of reverence that we do about our guys. Now, yes, our franchises are older, but to your credit, they won more recently. But there's no reason for a Marlins fan to be invested in a franchise who only cares about winning, I don't know, once every 10 to 15 years.
It's still more than the Mets do right now. And again, I'm saying because, you know what it's like. You had the Patriots. The Mets won when I was 1 year old. I was a 49ers fan before I was a Jets fan. So the 49ers won in 94 when I'm 9 years old. And I remember being 9 years old going into sixth grade with my Steve Young sweatshirt on. And that feeling that I had, I was just the coolest kid in the school, I've never experienced that again. when Germany won the World Cup, like, and I wasn't even that big of a soccer fan. It was like, oh my God, this feeling that I have right now, I would trade this for literally anything else in the world. You're different. You're a dad. You have those sort of emotions. Other than marrying Christina, when the Mets made it to the World Series, like that was like, I still remember when they beat the Cubs. And I remember like the jumping with Familia, like that moment to me. I remember Matt Florell, my brother and I, we went out to Cross Gates to get the merchandise. If I had that taste of winning, sign me up for 50 years of being absolute crap. I would live with that if I got to reach the mountaintop at one point. We'll put out a poll.
I get it. Yeah, we do. We come at this from different perspectives. We do. We need to hear from others. So please reach out to us. Let us know how you're feeling, Marlins fans.
I will put out a poll. I'll be real quick with mine. With my team that I think still has a chance. You kind of alluded to them earlier. The Blue Jays are hovering 2 games below 500. Their offense has just been horrific. Bichette, Springer, Vlad looks like he's never played baseball before. They're severely underperforming. Do I think they're going to all underperform the rest of the year? I don't. Barrios, I never pronounce the pitcher's name. Is it Kikuchi? I always sound like I'm swearing when I say
it. No, you're good. You're good, Kikuchi.
They've been pitching well. Gausman has been pitching to that Cy Young level. Like, you look at the back of the baseball card. You're going to either regress to that or you're going to go up to that. I think Gausman is going to. Bassett, even though I'm not the biggest fan, like if he's your 3, your 4, he's going to get you 6 innings. I hate the pace that he does. I hate the windup. I hate the fact that the front arm just like is like non-existent when he throws. Mechanically, don't love him. I just feel like they're too much talent on that team to be two games under 500. The division's tough as anything. There's 4 teams in that division that could at any point pull off 10 wins in a row. I just think the Blue Jays are too good, too much talent on that roster to keep underperforming the way that they are.
There are a lot of barriers in their way, but I'm with you too. There's a lot of talent to count them out in April.
Exactly.
Yeah, let's come home. So now we're continuing our all-time favorite team. Again, we're picking players, our favorite players to put onto one team, a collection of my favorite players, a collection of Matt's favorite players. Today we're doing outfielders and DH. Matt, hit it. Let's go ahead and come home. Here we go. My outfielder to start is the one and only Albert Bell. If there was a guy I imitated more in the backyard was Albert freaking Bell. I absolutely loved him in Cleveland. I remember going to a Red Sox game when he was in Chicago and the entire stadium booing him and me standing up in left field cheering him on. I loved everything about this guy, how angry he was all the time, how he just wanted to murder every single pitch that came his way.
Or Fernando Villa.
Yeah, and Fernando Vina, absolutely. But he was such an intelligent hitter as well. I think the whole steroid era really clouded how great Albert Bell was during that stretch. Now, I'm sure there are some steroid links to Albert Bell, but he has not really been in the limelight as much since he's retired. Again,
I actually just saw him. He looks awful, dude. Like, if you're going to say, like, don't take steroids, if you look at him now, he looks like he's, like, 75 years old.
So he's like the Buff Bagwell of Major League Baseball?
Yes, and old and gray and plump. Like, he doesn't look like the same, like, muscle.
I remember hearing a story about him when he played for LSU. Before he went up to bat, he went to his manager and said, I'm hitting a home run to center field. And he ended up hitting a home run to left field. And the manager was in awe of him, but he came back to the dugout, and threw his bat, threw his helmet, and the manager's like, what's wrong? What are you upset about? He's like, I was trying to go to center field. Like, this intensity that he had, I just absolutely loved it. Loved it on the baseball field. And I've always loved Albert Bell. I had to put him on my team.
I always did the same thing when I played football. I was like, how does anybody hit major league pitching with keeping their hands literally almost like in front of their body?
It was this super quiet, coiled stance. And when he loaded and then unloaded on the baseball, there was nobody else like it. It was something to see.
So if you get one steroid guy, I'm going to go for another steroided outfielder.
Now prove to me this next guy's on steroids.
Bam! Look at that.
Okay, maybe.
All right, so Ron Gant. So when, like, you're probably in the same boat. When I first started watching baseball, the only teams that you could watch were the Braves because they were on TBS. So the Mets weren't on. So I just automatically, like, fell in love with the early 90 Braves. And Ron Gant out in left field, I'm like, this guy is superhuman. The size of his biceps. There's actually another picture that I was going to put onto the slide, but I couldn't change the size of the picture to keep it clear. It was very blurry. Like his absolute, like I had to take my shirt off right now. Like, look at that python compared to like this guy. And I was just like, he was not fluid. But when I was looking up his stats, he still had 321 career home runs, which kind of like blew me away. He played for 16 years. He played for like the Braves, the Reds, the Cardinals. He played for a whole bunch of different teams. He was like my first. I'm like, oh my God, is this what like human beings look like? I was just always taken back just because of the sheer size of his bicep. I'm like, there's no way that even fits into a jersey. He had to do some sort of like manipulation to get his arms in, but just absolutely love Ron Gant. Again, when I'm like 8 years old, love Ron Gant.
I forget what home run derby it was. It had to be like circa like 92, 93. And I remember watching with my father. My father was in such awe of the size of his arm. Him and Reggie Sanders were like super jacked.
Yes, from the Reds,
Yes, both on the Reds. They were super jacked during that period there. Like, look at the size of it. He was like a professional wrestler. At the time, we thought nothing of it, and then we learned about steroids. But it was super impressive. I loved Ron Gant when he was on the Braves. He was awesome. Serious pop. It
was like the Sid Bream days and the Terry Pendleton. It was like that was like my first like, okay, I like what I'm watching here. Okay, next for you.
So now when I made my all-time outfielders, I picked a couple guys. You'll see this with my next guy, where defense isn't exactly a priority, but if there was a player I loved, I mean, when you think about defense and the best defensive center fielder of all time, it ends with Andruw Jones, just the absolute best at it. I played center field. I was a Braves fan when I was younger. He was exactly who I wanted to be. Although, you grow up watching, highlights and making diving catches, home run robbing catches, all this stuff. There's not many great highlights with Andruw Jones. He's got a couple because he doesn't have the highlights because he didn't need to have highlights. He just got to every ball with great ease. And it was, if Andruw Jones couldn't catch it, then no one could catch it. I don't care if it was Griffey, Kenny Lofton, Jim Edmonds. No one made it easier. No one did it better than Andruw Jones. Absolutely loved watching him. There was that 3-4 year stretch where he was an absolutely fantastic hitter. One season he hit over 50 home runs. I always wanted him to take that next, step as a hitter. But now I've gotten older and I've seen obviously more careers come and go. Just how incredibly rare a career like Andruw Jones was. I believe he does belong in the Hall of Fame, although I'm incredibly biased. I would love to see him get in because when it comes to playing defense, no one was better. And to me, the bat was good enough to get him in.
Like I specifically remember 1996 World Series when he was 19 years old playing the Yankees. I remember like when they went up 2-0 against the Yankees, I remember going upstairs to wake up my mom and being like, Mom, I'm upset. The baseball season's going to end and the Braves are going to sweep the Yankees in the World Series. And I was like, oh my God, let's
not get started on that. I got a terrible story when it comes to that. But that's for another time.
It just completely jinxed them everything. And again, I didn't like the Braves at that time. I just still hated the Yankees. But I remember watching 19-year-old Andruw Jones and being like, this is the best center fielder I have ever watched. And like you said, I love how you brought up the fact that you never saw him dive. It's like every single thing he got to. And it was just nonchalant. Like the closest outfielder that I can say to Andruw Jones was Lagares from the Mets, where it was just like the range that he had. Again, not the fastest player by any means, but just literally got to everything. He, to me, was like the Ozzie Smith of the outfield. It was just absolutely unbelievable. Loved watching those shag balls.
That is the best comp for Andruw Jones. He was the Ozzie Smith of center field.
But a better hitter.
But a better hitter. And that's why, to me, he belongs in the Hall of Fame.
Yep. All right, my center fielder is a Hall of Famer, probably one of the top 10 baseball players of all time. The sweetest swing, even though it's a little loopy. I don't know how many times I wanted to be a left-handed hitter where I just could absolutely just get underneath the ball and just elevate. Ken Griffey Jr., there's not even much you can say about him. You can just go on forever. I loved him so much, and it was to the point where he transcended where few baseball players did, where he became pop culture and mainstream to the point where, like, there was no baseball shoes. Like, you had your baseball cleats. Like, I remember having, like, Kenny Lofton cleats. Mm-hmm. You had your Derek Jeters with, like, the Yankee with the Jumpman line.
I believe Deion Sanders had some too.
Deion Sanders, yeah. But again, he had, like, the football appeal to him as well. But he transcended where it was like, okay, casual wear, you're wearing Griffeys. Like, even today, I have pairs of Griffeys that I'll break out randomly just because I'm like, I just loved everything about him. He brought cool. He's the reason why I wore my hat backwards. It was just, he was baseball in the late 90s. When he got traded to the Reds, again, with like me, like having a soft place in my heart for the Reds, I was like, this is the best thing that could possibly happen. And then career falls apart with all the injuries. If he had stayed healthy, he could have been Barry Bonds without the steroids. Just one of the best absolute baseball. To still end up with 630 home runs when the end of his career was quite bad. You forget the White Sox year that he was with them. Still, like, you see him, you think the kid, you think the bubble gum, you think the robbing the home run in center field, you think the back-to-back home runs with his dad. Ken Griffey Jr., favorite center fielder of all time.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate how history seems to be repeating itself with Mike Trout.
Yep.
I mean, you look at the amount of years Mike Trout has put together that are Hall of Fame years, and then all of a sudden, no World Series. I mean, at least Griffey does have that one marquee postseason moment, racing around from first base and the Edgar Martinez double down the line against the Yankees. I mean, at least he has that. I think Mike Trout would kill for a moment or an opportunity like that. I really hope that's not the case with Mike Trout. But it could be a lot worse than being compared to Ken Griffey Jr. But yeah, we still want that one more moment, I think, from Ken Griffey Jr. that unfortunately we never got.
Yep, completely agree. All right, going to our last one. Whoa, this shocks me.
Love. Now,
oh God, dude, I hate him.
This is more investment than anything else. Because I love Cespedes. I have a real soft spot for players who come from Cuba, considering what they are giving up in order to do so, to leave your family, not to be able to return, what you're putting on the line. I just grabbed a great book on El Duque Hernandez, Orlando Hernandez, and I started reading his story about how he came over from Cuba, what he had to go through. There's something about the story behind Cuban ball players and what they have to go through to come to this country. Cespedes was really the first one, like, during my time as being a fan that I really invested in and loved his story. Coming to the A's, his brief stint with the Red Sox and the Tigers. And I remember the off season of 2014 into 15, and it was my first time ever being on the Michael Kay show. Now, they didn't invite me on as their guest, but I did call in and got in, and I was so nervous because it was the first time ever being on the radio. And Michael Kay gets on there, and he goes, "So, Kevin from Cornwall, what would you like to say?" And prior to that, I had gotten into a huge argument with my friends at work, all Mets fans, how they were ecstatic over the signing of Michael Kadire. And I'm like, guys, a corner outfielder in his early to mid 30s, what are we getting excited about when Cespedes is out there with serious power and all this potential? Like, that's the guy we should be going over. And he ended up signing with, I believe it was the Tigers. And I'm telling you right now, like, Michael Kadire will not have more than 10 home runs this season. And both LaGreca and Michael Kay said I was nuts for saying that. I'm like, I'm telling you, he didn't. Kadire was terrible. He was
friends with David Wright, though.
Yes, And then that magical week for the Mets happened. Remember, they were supposed to trade Wilmer Flores. He was crying at shortstop. The deal fell apart. They won that huge game. Flores hit that game-winning home run. And that same night, they traded for Cespedes, and they go on this magical run that brings them all the way to the World Series. Now, we then gave him a lot of money. He did not live up to that contract. But there was this very lovable, like, when I think about like why Red Sox fans especially loved Manny Ramirez, yes, he was the greatest one of the best right-hand hitters we've ever seen. But his antics, how he fooled around with defense and base running and all that stuff, like, why do you tolerate all of that? I kind of felt the same way with Cespedes. It's like, yeah, he's a goofball. Yeah, he gets hurt. But, man, when he's on and he mashes, he just takes your team to the next level. I've always loved that about him. I love Yoenis Cespedes. I love players from Cuba. I love everything about him.
I think it's completely sacrilegious you put him the same mentioning as Manny Ramirez, because Manny Ramirez took baseball serious. Cespedes, to me,
so does Cespedes at times.
Quit on the Mets when he was coming to the end of his contract. How many times? Oh, I just got a thumbs up for myself. To me, he was like the quintessential bad teammate. Oh, hey, it didn't give you the thing. What I like, that magical run that he brought them on, yes, I did fall in love with him. And it was like, okay, we were going to get Carlos Gomez. We end up getting Cespedes. Completely changes. One of the hottest streaks, I think, other than Daniel Murphy, a Met has ever been on in my lifetime.
Yeah.
He quit on the Mets. Who knows what happens with that whole Bohr situation where then he's gone. I think the last season, I think he played like 10 games with the Mets. To me, he just absolutely quit on them. There's no way. It's just complete sour taste in my mouth. When I see like the neon glow sleeve that the players still wear, when I see Acuna with even like his like yellow sleeve, I get flashbacks of him and I get upset. Because that shocks me that if you're a baseball historian and you put Cespedes, like if I say Cespedes right now to like my father-in-law or to my dad, they will go out on a like tirade on how much they despise him. The fact that you pick him as one of your favorite all-time outfielders,
you just went on this whole rant about how it's better being a Marlins fan because they've won 2 World Series. You can argue that moment you had in 2015, as close as you got to getting to the top, you wouldn't come anywhere near there without Cespedes. You sold your soul. There's a thumbs up. You sold your soul to get there. That was the guy who got you there, and you can't even appreciate him?
I would take on my Mets outfielder pantheon. I would take like Timo Perez. I would take Benny Agbayani.
Oh my God.
Dude, I would take Jason Bay. At least Jason Bay tried.
That is sacrilege. That is messed up. That you would take Jason Bay over Cespedes. That's messed up.
God, Jason Bay just sucked. At least he cared. Cespedes quit on the team.
Cespedes cared sometimes.
He cared about this. That's what he cared about.
He got a lot of that with a really cool car, by the way, too.
I think he got like $110 million. I think I remember his contract. He played like 8 games.
Next, do your guy.
All right, so the next guy should be in the Baseball Hall of Fame simply because he's got the best hair, I think, of all time.
Oh my God.
So, of course, I've got the locks flowing today. Nick Swisher, again, 12 seasons. So loved him when he was with the A's. One of the main reasons why I started growing out my hair is because, hey, here's this flamboyant personality that seems to transcend beyond the sport. Fell in love with him. Bought my Nick Swisher jersey. Bought a lot of Oakland A's stuff. He then gets traded to the White Sox. And I'm like, okay, not as big. Like, I don't know as much about the White Sox. I like the hat. Okay, I can support him. I remember being in grad school when he got traded from the White Sox to the Yankees. I remember my buddy Dan sending me a text just going, ha, 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 with like a billion ha's. And I'm like, Dan, what's up? I'm in class. Your boy just got traded to the Yankees. And I felt like a dog that was just neutered. Like I didn't know how to react. I'm like, what is going? out of all the teams to trade, it's not even the fact that I hate them and despise them, because I could get past that. It's the whole typical Yankee, like, oh, we've got to be clean cut and no facial hair and no long hair, so you've got to cut your hair. And basically neutering him as what this personality he became, I was absolutely crushed. The same way I was crushed when the Mets lost to the Royals. And I remember going to bed after they lost the last game and like being devastated. And Christina saying to me, like, don't be upset. It's just the game. That feeling of that anger and hatred that I had was the same feeling I had when he got traded to the Yankees, because I absolutely loved him. Even some of my favorite players today are still ones that look like me with the longer hair. So Nick Swisher, even though he was like not your best baseball player, he was like the bringing in of the money ball, the on-base percentage, the making walks sexy, change baseball. So like Nick Swisher is one of my favorite outfielders, one of my favorite baseball players of all time.
That's funny because of his stupid hair.
Because of stupid hair. Okay, finish this off with your DH. Big cat.
So I did not go traditional DH. I went with a hitter I've always loved. And again, going back to loving the story, the big cat, Andres Galarraga, who started off the Expos, really made a name for himself on those late 90s Colorado Rockies teams. You know, the whole thing, well, he plays in Coors, the numbers are inflated. But then he replaces Fred McGriff in Atlanta, and he has a number of great seasons in Atlanta, then gets diagnosed with leukemia, I believe it was, in the early part of the 2001, 2002 season. Forget exactly which one it was, but then came back the following year. And I believe that first came back, I'm pretty sure he homered. I've always been a big fan of Andres Galarraga, always had a huge smile on his face. Again, another guy in the backyard. I always imitated his stance. He had a very, very open stance, big leg kick, lots of power in those quads. I have a soft spot in my heart for Rockies players. I do, especially ones who are successful outside of Coors as well. And he's one of those guys. I loved Andres Galarraga.
My actual batting stance was a lot like him because my left eye is nowhere near as strong as my right eye. So when I batted, I had to go with an open stance so I could see with my right eye. And I would like place the bat on my shoulder and open, and then like I would close off my stance. And my dad, being an old school baseball fan, he was like, you can't do that. There's like too much motion in your swing. My dad was like very linear with his swing, very short. But it was like, no, I saw the big cat bat in the shoulders, basically front facing the pitcher. I was able to close off and then explode. Love the big cat, even though with like the Braves and everything, wasn't that huge of a fan of him, but still love him as well. For my DH, Edgar Martinez, probably I would say top 3 DH in baseball. I would say probably top 3 if you're going to go Ortiz.
I would say him. It's either him and Ortiz. It's one of those two. Yeah.
So, like, again,
your boy Harold Baines, but I mean, it's fine.
Of course, Hall of Famer Harold Baines. Again, it was like we seem to have like the same sort of model, like these people that we emulated in the backyard playing wiffle ball. Like it was like the bat, like way up over the head, like leaning forward. And again, you have the iconic moment when they beat the Yankees. What was that? Was that in the divisional round or the division?
No, that was divisional round. It hit the double down the left field line of Jack McDougal. Jack McDowell. That's Edgar Martinez there for you. Absolutely.
And that Mariners team is forever like etched in my mind with like Jay Buhner and Alex Cora and Boone. It was just like a fun team. And it was like they play in this weird dome and it's loud and they're completely like in the upper corner of America. And it's just like the colors were different for baseball at that time. Like I think Seattle Mariners baseball, and that's just like 90s baseball to me personified. Which is like really when we first started like falling in love with the sport. You had the flashy Ken Griffey Jr. and then you had the 330 hitting Edgar Martinez, who was just an absolute stud. Like I would even argue in a big situation, I'd rather have Edgar Martinez up than Griffey. And then you had Buhner behind him. He had the protection.
Yeah, he was a pure hitter. Hitter. I remember way back. I don't know if it was on ESPN or it had to be an ESPN because MLB network wasn't around then. And it must have been Baseball Tonight. They were talking to Edgar about one of these hitting drills that he does. And for fast pitchers, he used to crank up the machine to like 104, 105, what I would call now the Mason Miller level.
Yeah.
And he used to number the balls. He used to put numbers on the baseballs. And he would have those things come in, zooming in at like the highest speeds. And he wouldn't even swing the bat. It was just about watching the ball come in, and he would see if he could read the number off the ball. And I'm like, there was this scientific approach to Edgar Martinez because he's not the biggest guy in the world. He's not the strongest guy in the world. He doesn't swing hard. It is just this smooth swing, but a very, again, scientific approach to it. I've always loved those hitters who maximize their body, but also the best part of their body was their brain, utilizing their brain. And he did that, and he rode that all the way to the Hall of Fame, and rightfully so.
And playing 18 years for the same franchise too. To me, that means a lot. That's like let's Tony Gwynn-esque. Like
very, very. Yep. So to wrap this up, so yeah, I think that slide one more time, Matt. Here are our teams so far. Man, if we ever played this out, my team would absolutely destroy yours. But it would be fun to watch it play out a little bit, don't you think?
Well, let's see. Cespedes would quit on you. Bell would be popped for steroids. George Brett would probably be ejected for pine tar. Lindor would be hitting sub 200. McGriff would be throwing commercials. Alvarez would still be learning English and breaking his thumb.
Wow. Messed up. What's your career batting average with that team right there? Well, no, you do have Edgar, Griffey, Larkin, and Piazza, and Olerud. So you have guys who can average it out, but man, Ron Gant, Nick Swisher, and Hojo at third base.
Hojo was a 30-30, dude. He was a 30-30 guy.
That bottom part of the lineup there.
30-30. 30-30. You got no 30-30 on that team.
Just wait till you see my pitching staff that's going to come at those guys. Hojo, he's not sniffing 30-30.
Oh, get out of here.
And we're going to do pitchers next time. We're going to do our starting rotation next time. We'll talk more about what's going on in baseball. Lots more fun stuff to talk about here on Hats and Bats. Matt, we talked for a while. This is a good conversation, buddy.
Even though I disagree with a lot of things you said, I had fun.
That's what makes it fun.
All right, buddy. Be good.
All right, you too. Big guys. Thank you so much.